Thanks again for doing this, and I guess I'll start with how surprised you were when you received this news that Scott Brooks was fired.
I wasn't actually. I had a pretty good feel it was going to happen, especially when Sam did not sort of come out and say right at the end of the season that he was going to keep him because, certainly you can say there's an evaluation period, but the way Sam operates, he's not somebody who hasn't put a lot of thought into it. I do think that they took great care. This probably doesn't really matter, but I think they took great care to try to not harm Scott's reputation. I think they wanted to do it relatively quickly because they wanted to let him have an opportunity to get some of these other jobs that are out there because he's probably going to get one of them. And they went above and beyond to try to not criticize him. So I do think that they tried to do it as humanely as you could do it, but at the end of the day, you're still firing the guy. There's a measure of risk here. Every little bobble that the Thunder have in the next year is going to be viewed through the Durant free agency lens, especially when you're talking about something this enormous. Getting down to the absolute bottom line, I think when you get to July 1st, 2016, you want to know that you did everything you possibly could to keep him. And if you had some doubts about the coach and you didn't change the coach, and it goes south, you don't want to have that regret. And I really think that that is a baseline motivating factor here. They felt that they might be able to improve the coaching position, and they didn't want to leave that stone unturned.
When I heard this news, from a national reporter standpoint, you were basically the first person I thought of just because I know you went through this with LeBron. And so I asked that question with kind of like you used a lens on. Do you think there was some sort of consultation between Sam Presti and Kevin Durant and maybe even Russell Westbrook before a decision like this is made?
Before the decision was made, no. Obviously, they didn't. He informed them. Probably within moments of informing Scott. He didn't want them to hear it another way. Maybe he informed them before he told Scott. I don't know, but I don't think he went to them and said, "Do you think I should do this?" There's two schools of thought on this. One school of thought, and this is the camp that Sam is in, and he's made this very clear, is his job is to choose the coach and to choose the roster. It is not the player's job. It is not part of their purview, and you don't want to put that on them. You don't want attached to Kevin Durant that he's a coach killer, or that he hired or fired a guy. That follows people around for their entire careers, whether it's true or not. And so you do the GM as your job. This is part of your decision-making process. The other process is if you get the player to take ownership of a decision, you have him be invested in a decision and he wants to stay with your franchise. In other words, if you go to Kevin and say, "Kevin, who do you want to be your coach?" and Kevin gives you a name, then Kevin is invested in that coach's success and would want to stay around and help that coach out. And teams have gone that way. Knowing Sam like I do, that's just not part of his DNA to operate that way. Also, knowing Sam like I do, he knows who his next coach is going to be. And he would not have made this move without knowing that. I would assume there'll still be a dog and pony show, but when you fire a successful coach, you really can't do it until you know who your next coach is going to be. And I really do believe that Sam already has it lined up.
Brian Windhorst with us, ESPN, on the Little Caesars Hot and Ready hotline on 107.7 The Franchise. Well, then, would that more explain the timing of why now? Or would it be hey, they just didn't make the playoffs, this was just the right time to punt? Why now, I guess, would be the overriding question.
I do think that part of it was they wanted to be as upfront and as kind as possible to Scott Brooks. if you were going to wait until the end of the playoffs or to the conference finals, it's possible a team like Denver or Orlando, two teams that would be interested in Scott, would have filled their positions, and you put Scott behind the eight ball a little bit, even though you're still going to pay him $4 million next year. Don't cry for Scott. He'll be just fine. He's going to get another job, and he has protection on his contract. So don't. But I do believe that part of it was that they wanted to give him the best chance to go forward. But for example, if you wanted to make sure you had a chance at Tom Thibodeau, you may have waited until the Bulls were eliminated. So the fact that Sam did this now, I also think implies that he knows what direction he wants to go in.
I guess my more why now was more on the macro level. And Sam kind of threw this out there, and there are different schools of thought, whether they believe Sam when he says this or not, that this past season, with all the injuries that were included in it, really didn't matter that much in terms of his decision. And if you do believe that school of thought, and let me know if you do or not, then why not fire Scott Brooks before last year and maybe have 2 years with Kevin and a new coach, or let him ride out his contract and see what happens there. Although I will grant you up front that gets a little murky when you got a player signing a deal. I guess that I'm going why now more macro. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do, and I think Sam didn't want to get in a situation where he had a lame duck coach. And I think he also felt like, frankly, we're gonna have that explained when we see who he hires. So, for example, if there's a press conference a week from now with Billy Donovan at the front of the line there, or it's Kevin Ollie at the front of the line there, maybe he couldn't have hired them a year ago. Maybe Billy Donovan wasn't ready to come a year ago. He had a bad year this year, didn't make the NCAA tournament. He got a contract extension, but it was for 1 year. Kevin Ollie had just won the national championship last year. Maybe he couldn't get Kevin Ollie. Maybe maybe his backup is Tom Thibodeau, and maybe he couldn't have gotten Tom Thibodeau last year. Some of it may just be timing. Maybe he had decided in his head a while ago. Maybe it was a year ago. Maybe it was 2 years ago. That hey, if we don't get this done, I know I'm going to have to fire Scott Brooks. And the way Sam plays the chess game. He probably knew that he was going to have to fire him, so he was preparing for this, maybe even as much as a year or two ago. So all of those factors go into place, and he didn't have the foresight of knowing this season was going to be wrecked by injuries. I do think that there is something to the idea that Scott had taken them as far as they could go. We've seen this with coaches over the years, where you see a team reach a certain level and they plateau for whatever reason, and then you bring in another coach, and that coach can elevate the team because he's able to do some things and to work on some things that the previous coach couldn't get done. Now, these are very difficult coaches to find, and it hasn't always worked out. But this I think Sam was looking at this as a calculated gamble. He believes. I just really think that at the end of the day, he does not want to sit there and feel like he could have made this move. He could have gotten Billy Donovan, or he could have gotten Kevin Ollie, and then he didn't. And Durant walks on him, and you always wonder, what if I had done this? And so I think that's a major driving factor in this. I don't know if he'll ever admit that, but if you look at the moves that the Thunder have been making over the last 6 months, there's a transition there. The trading away of future draft picks, they never did that like this. The going into the luxury tax, obviously that was a no-no. And, Sam has explained directly to me, they always knew they were going to go into the tax, and the trading for Waiters and Cantor and Singler are trading for guys that they think can be core players, that they control their rights, and all of that is fine. And all of that makes good business sense. But I also see an organization that's spending more money and trading away some future options to get talent now because they're worried about Durant and his big decision.
Before we let you go, we see Steve Kerr, we see Mark Jackson before him, we see David Blatt in Cleveland, et cetera, thriving, I guess, if you will, with wins in numbers. And there isn't a whole lot of NBA coaching experience behind it. We see coaching, we see college coaches at the forefront of the list here for the next coach at Oklahoma City. How much does NBA coaching experience matter these days?
Yeah, well, talent always matters most, and getting your talent to work together, I think, is a big key. Kevin Ollie, for example, is one of the most beloved guys who's been in part of the league for the last 20 years. You go to people who play with Kevin Ollie, and there's just hundreds of them because the guy played on like 10 teams, and everybody loves him. I covered Kevin for 2 years in Cleveland. I have a really positive relationship with him. I remember talking to I was I was very oddly having a conversation with LeBron James and Kevin Love earlier this year, and all three of us were talking about how much we love Kevin Ollie because LeBron played with him, Love played with him, I covered him, and just everybody loves him. And I know Kevin Durant loves him too. He has this ability to endear himself, and so that's one option where he would walk in and instantaneously have respect because everybody appreciates the way he goes about his business, and not love him like he's a great guy, but love him about how he's a professional and how he carries himself. The other thing, is, Billy Donovan has coached dozens of NBA players. He's put together great teams, and he's an extraordinary history of executing on the sidelines. Both of those are fantastic choices, but it also wouldn't surprise me if Sam goes with another option because Sam always has something else going across the grain. And all week, you can talk about Donovan and Ollie for the next 6 hours, and one of them may be there, and I think both of them want the job pretty badly. But I could also see Sam going a completely different direction to blow somebody away because that's what Sam does.
Pick somebody, Windhorst. Pick somebody before we get off the phone. Who is it?
Oh, I mean, if I had this in front of me, I would get Billy Donovan. The Magic wanted him 7 years ago. I think he's a great choice. But the Kevin Ollie choice, if they go that direction, would be more of we want to bond Durant to the coach before he leaves. I think it's a tough call, but I think Billy Donovan is the guy.
Hey, you did this on short notice. We're very, very grateful. Seriously. Thanks, Brian.
No problem.